Happy Monday, everybody. Oh, there we are. Hey. Believe. Hey, we have Mr. Justin Robert Young on the line. How goes it?
Oh, sheets. Go on to bed. Hello to everybody that was watching me on the Jury channel. I'm glad you guys made it.
How's it been, Jerry? How's it been?
Good, man. You guys were cranking all weekend. I hear.
Yeah, another all weekend shoot. But we had our friend Bill Duran in town.
That's amazing.
Punished Props Academy. Look at that plug.
Oh, look at that. Oh, is that a subscription thing that he's doing, or?
I don't
Because
exactly.
I've been yelling at him to do that for literally like 5 years.
Let me see. I'm going to go to punishedprops.com, and I bet it will tell me. Oh, yeah, that might be their Patreon.
Oh, is that it?
Possibly. I don't know. Oh. Is that the internet's Brian Brushwood?
Ahoy!
We are seeing Andrew again this week. I don't know if...
Oh, he's out this week too?
Yeah.
So I've got stuff.
All right. Well, here, 2 seconds. Let me freshen up, and then we're ready to roll.
Hello, beautiful people. Hello, my name is Mr. Brushwood. What's your first name? I don't know. It was a Simpsons bit where he was pretending to be Mr. Burns. He was trying to collect Mr. Burns. He sent a letter that he didn't want Mr. Burns to get, so he went to the post office to collect Mr. Burns' mail. Hello. Yeah, I gotta.
Don't want to be caught podcasting without your shoes. Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're about to start the Weird Things podcast in a few minutes. Oh, let me turn this thing on. Sorry, we're all running a little behind today. Oh, how's everybody doing? Everybody have a good weekend? It was very busy for me. Oh, it's hot in here. It's a little hot in here. I was gonna check on the AC. But hello, everybody. Yeah. But, yeah, we went and shot a bunch of stuff with Bill Duran. If you're a patron on the Modern Rogue, patreon.com/modernrogue, you got to see some clips. We used Patreon has that lens feature, so we use that, liberally when we shoot stuff. So you got to see some clips of what we were working on. And then Saturday, if you're a $10 a month patron over there, we did a whole, how long was that live stream? Probably 3 or 4 hours of us filming, and live casting Jason, Jason's, face, getting a life cast, a molding. So that was pretty cool, and we took questions during, so that's something to keep an eye out for. Whew. How's everybody? I started the stream because I saw Justin get on, but of course he went and did something else, and then Brian came in and also did something else. But hello. We're gonna have some good stories today. I guess I need to figure out what order I'm gonna do these stories in, because we have 3 of them. I feel like we gotta start light. Do we ramp up? Do we start light, get heavy, and then heavier, or do we do a peak? Justin, help get. So we've got 3 stories today for Weird Things.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out the best order to present them in. Whether we start light and go heavier, or
That's usually our modus operandi, right? Where it's like, well,
Yeah.
no, I guess
Yeah,
unless
yeah.
it's a big news story.
Let's have a little appetizer, a little app.
Yeah, okay. Because none of these are okay, cool. Okay, cool.
Justin,
That
you
makes me
got your heart out at 3, right? Or 4, or 1, or 2, at some number.
Do you have a heart out today, Justin?
I do not have a heart out today. I will eventually have a heart out in
In a few weeks. April?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
What's funny is I thought you were saying the heart out is in April. Like he's got to be wrapped
Gotta be
up by
done
April.
By April.
Yeah.
We only have 11 days to film this episode. All right. I'm feeling good. You guys feeling good? You feeling warmed up? I mean, how you guys doing? I want to get you guys like.
No, I'm good. I've got that that busy schedule day where I'm just swinging from vine to vine, where it's like, man, I've been warmed up all day.
Rest in peace, Vine.
Oh, too soon. Hashtag.
Dude, Vine really was great. Like,
It really was, and
Yeah.
it was adorable for what it was, and they tried to make it into something that it wasn't, and that was unfortunate.
Wait, what is this?
Vine, the
you
service.
remember the mobile application Vine?
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
Well,
I got
yeah.
a little show and tell here.
Okay, so I saw that on the band.
Yeah, do you know what this is?
Sample of pee.
No. Here, see if you can zoom in on that. I don't know if it'll show up. It's right there.
a sec.
You're positive it's not pee.
Pretty
It
sure.
looks a lot like pee is a thing. and
Looks
it's
a lot
also
like a pee
in
sample.
a cup that looks like one of
There
those
you go.
pee
You see
samples.
that?
It's clear.
No. This black thing right there.
A splinter in the mind's eye.
Oh, Bonnie told me about this.
Yeah. So we could talk about this if you want to talk about a weird thing, or I could just share it with you right now.
no idea what it is, but it is up to you. I will ride with you if you want to bring it to the show.
Yeah, if you want to do that, we can have it go.
I mean, just if you're hurting for material, if you feel like we got plenty, I'll tell you right now.
I think we've got a lot of good
Okay.
stuff.
That is the needle that broke off in Penny's foot a month ago.
Oh my God.
Yeah. She stepped on a needle, was like, ow. And then was like, oh, ow, ow. Oh, it really hurts. And then a few days later, she's like, oh, it just still really hurts. I'm like, well, it's going to be sore for a bit. And then a month later, she's like, whoa, it really started hurting again. And then we looked and then saw that her skin sort of poked up like a circus tent. And we're like, that's not right. And so we went and got an x-ray, and she had been...
When you would think it was like, maybe it's a thorn that got in there.
Sure.
Possibly. But
it
after
was...
a while, if it doesn't come out...
And
and
what's
that
funny...
sucker's long. I didn't realize it almost looks like an inch long or so.
Yeah, that's the part that was in her. Yeah, it's bigger than the needle that I put in my eye. And Matt, you've seen those, Justin. Like that.
Yeah. Oh, no, those are not insignificant.
Yeah, and so she
So she had it removed today, is what Bonnie was saying.
yes, and oh man, we were tempted. There was I took a magnet and I was like, "You feel anything?" Because I was thinking of that 500-pound magnet. Like
Oh,
we could just because like the sharp part was poking up, and it's like just go doop, is what I wanted to do. But instead, like she had to be put under, and
Really?
and the whole thing. Yeah, it was
Wow.
like $5,000.
Oh, fudge.
Yeah, I tried to
Now
sell her.
You can have a $5,000 needle.
Yeah, well, this is my trophy. I'll put it on my trophy room. This is one of my most expensive treasures. Oh, yeah.
Oof.
Penny was a trooper, though.
Yeah, I hear she's recovering today.
Yeah.
That's good.
I mean, anytime you get knocked out, that's a big deal.
Oh, yeah, I guess if you've gone under, you're probably set for the day.
Yeah. Yeah, you're probably not going to
Probably.
run on to school afterwards.
All right. You doing good, Justin? You know, you had did you have jury right before this or politics?
No, I just do politics chat for like about an hour each day.
Nice.
So just live on twitch.tv/Justin R. Young, talking about whatever anybody wants to talk about, having a good time.
Now, what's happening in that old circus?
Are they
up
still
in
doing politics? I
Washington,
thought that was over with.
It turns out it's still around. They love it. These people, they can't stop politicking. No, a couple good stories today. The Cambridge Analytica stuff in Facebook is really interesting, and there's a really good article in the New York Magazine about Hope Hicks, the former personal assistant to the president, who is like young. She's like 29, and like had this really crazy kind of whirlwind ride before resigning like 2 months ago, or maybe less than that, maybe a month ago.
Oh, cool.
But, yeah.
Yeah.
One quick thing, Bryce, if
Yeah.
you could tuck miniature Justin down to roughly the eye line of us over here, then it won't look like I'm looking up when I
Tell me when.
almost. Yep, there it is. There we go. So it's
that's
not like
what
if I
we
look
call
over
the
there, it's
bottom
not
of
like
the
I'm
screen. Yeah.
super far, looking weird.
Gotcha.
Does it
Okay.
look like I'm almost looking at his picture?
It does actually.
Yeah, perfect.
there
All
you go.
right, I like that.
All right. Well, then let's get ready to do the show. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do this.
And this guy's the monitor's off on
It's-
purpose,
it
right?
is on
Got it.
purpose.
All right.
I have to get surprises.
I'm excited.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Weird Things podcast. I'm Bryce Castillo, filling in for Andrew Main one more time. Joined as always by Brian Brushwood.
Yeah, Andrew Main on assignment. I always wanted to say that. I'm here for Andrew Main, who is on assignment.
You know, and by the way, there might be more than Andrew Main on assignment. This guy he's out doing crazy stuff. Who knows if anyone will ever hear from him ever again.
Yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Hopefully, when he
that
comes back, it's in grand epic style.
Nope. I think he's gone.
He's collecting those checks and a hermit in the woods.
I know.
He calls
Although,
it the
by the way, we
Solitude
do want to point out
Project.
that his new book, The Looking Glass, is available. That is the new book in the Naturalist series. It came out last week, so we definitely want to support that. If you enjoyed The Naturalist, then go ahead and get Looking Glass right now. And as always, if you like it and you read it, the best way that you can support it is to review it.
Mm-hmm.
Always a big thing to read and review your favorite writers. And let me just say this. They always just have the Amazon or the people that make his books. Those book covers are just dank.
They look
Right.
great.
And this is on Audible, it looks like. So you can also get an audiobook version of it if you like.
Yeah, I believe I already bought it. It's next up. I just finished my previous book, but man, oh man, did I love The Naturalist. I think it's my favorite of all of Andrew's novels.
There you go. We've got a couple of stories here today to talk about, to get a little weird with you guys. We've talked a lot about drones on this show.
Drones.
Drones. Real quick, like
Drones.
what are the various applications from micro to macro of drones on society?
Well,
The way
first
that
of all,
I understand it is
number
primarily
one-
they're there to deli slice Brian's hand open.
yeah, okay, all right, that's number one.
yeah.
Number two, wedding photography.
Okay.
3, majestic sweeping shots of vistas to let us know we're in Lannisport.
Okay, more of it. More photography.
And also chopping up my hands again, coming back a second time.
So those are our 4 things: chopping up your hands twice,
Yeah,
and
yes.
photography twice.
yes.
But also like Amazon delivery drones.
Sure.
Now have we seen any practical application of that? I know we all feel like it's on the horizon, but it's so. We did cover a story of first aid being delivered by drone.
Okay.
So I guess object delivery and reconnaissance and
Short to medium length travel. We've talked about drones that will take you around across the Bay Area or something.
oh, that's right.
From-
Yeah, like
from-
a quadcopters.
Quadcopters,
or
Yeah,
Hexcopters.
I mean those I think are a different. They're almost a different breed, like same family, different breed in terms of like what we would understand to be autonomous vehicles that through computing can just like go from one path to another and either take a picture or have something in its grasp that they can deliver. But certainly, yeah, no, we've seen. I mean, Amazon has made a big deal over the last few years in showing off their drone technology to 60 Minutes, whether or not they're on the verge of actually doing anything with it. But yeah, no, I think that there's no doubt that as we, as the United States kind of regulate more and more exactly what it means to operate and fly a drone, that we will see more of them out there.
Well, even on a very personal level, right? Drones are just toys. You can just play with drones. There are drone races.
Yeah, one of my favorite drone applications was a bracelet. This was like a CES show. I don't know that it ever became available, but a bracelet that you would pull off. You would throw it in the air. It would real quick start flying, orient itself towards you, snap a selfie, and then come back, land in your hand. It became a bracelet again.
Oh, cool.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah. So in
Micro drones, I guess, would be the words.
Yeah, I guess that
Yeah.
sounds about right. So South by Southwest is happening right now, and at South by Southwest, a new possible application for drones was unveiled. This is coming out of the
Drone hosts of podcasts. It just goes.
They really drone on. This
And
is
they only come in the white model.
so this is a new piece of technology out of the University of Tokyo.
Dunks in basketball. It would allow you the jumping power to leap high
Oh,
enough
God,
to reach
this
the
is
ceiling,
horrific.
creating the potential for new kinds of sports. And with humans able to jump from one side of the street to the other, we wouldn't need crosswalks anymore.
What?
Nor entrances to buildings built on the first floor.
Ah!
Wheelchairs would also become unnecessary, thus changing the whole concept of so-called barrier-free.
This is
or
not
wheelchair-friendly
real.
areas. Understanding the feeling of walking on the moon while staying on Earth
So,
could also
this is
spark
for the
new
audio
interest in
listeners.
space exploration.
This is a backpack with two giant fans above them that basically is constantly. It's like standing inches underneath two helicopters, just blasting air down so that you
yeah.
can experience 1/6 normal gravity.
Brian, remember when you first played Super Mario, the first one?
Yeah,
right?
sure.
And then you played Super Mario 2, and everybody like hung up in the air that much longer.
Yeah, sure, sure.
That's basically what the difference between a regular leap and what these people are promising.
Which would explain why this comes to us from Japan.
Yes.
So this is a device from students of the University of
Oh
Tokyo.
my god, this is insane. Oh, these animations are hilarious and adorable.
So the idea is that this is a drone technology you could wear as a backpack, and it would assist you in jumping. It could make you jump 2 to 3 times higher than normal.
Man, okay, you know what this is? This is a theme park attraction, and that's about it.
Okay. I mean, that would be a fun attraction. I mean, we do have, amusement VR things in malls.
Sure. And truthfully, like I went to Space Camp and they have this area where they have this rigging with springs that you would wear a harness and then you got to experience, lunar 1/6 gravity, and you would walk about 20 feet from one side to another. That was novel and fun and a precious memory of mine as a child. I would imagine it would be considerably more fun to have a football field to go running and bounding around and fly up and down and stuff.
All right. Well, let me ask you this though.
Mm-hmm.
So understood, sure, that the amusement, but if we were forced to come up with a work-a-day application for it, I think it would certainly be very specialized. But how different is this than a bike for a bike messenger or something that somebody can expend less energy and get faster, get to places faster.
Sure, or like one of those warehouse exosuits that help you carry heavier loads.
I think the mitigating factor for me is all I could think of is the insane sound at all times. And I think that's one of the biggest problems we're going to have with drone technology in general is that the sound, like everybody underestimates just how much noise pollution all of these generate. Now with delivery drones, they have the solution of being able to fly up vertically to a level that they don't disturb people underneath them. You might barely hear a zipping or whatever, but it'll sound like less than an airplane flying, at 30,000 feet above you.
Sure. But imagine that the noise problem is solved. We get better electric motors or better lubrication. I don't even know where the sound necessarily comes from. But
one of the, I guess, I don't want to speculate on how they would do that, but yeah. Because I'm already thinking like, well, if you broadcast like noise canceling waves, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Because that was one of the exciting things. Justin, you remember when we did the VR stuff and we went to the New World Symphony and they wave their hands to this giant park where thousands of people gather, and it's right behind a major thoroughfare, and and so there's traffic noise all over, and they say like, all of these columns have noise canceling speakers, so when you stand there, you don't hear the traffic behind you.
The negative sound waves.
Because basically, it's a big symphony where people can sit outside, not pay the money to be in there, and just enjoy the symphony. But not only is it keeping all the audio, it's preserving the fidelity of the audio if you're just sitting out there, but it also, all the speakers are pointed in and fairly targeted, so it doesn't just totally take over the entire block as well. Like you kind of have to be like in this little area to hear it, which is really rad.
So
what does it look like? Assuming that these weaknesses get solved.
So I would imagine,
because this becomes a space like one of the interesting things in this video is the idea of like buildings that don't need to have entrances on the first floor.
Okay, that's not true. But you know what's funny is I went to a similar place. I pictured the beverage guy at the ball game is just like, instead of throwing hot dogs or whatever, he's got a beer and he just bounds up and then lands next to you and hands you one, or lands on the person next to you.
Yeah, you would need lids. You would really want lids for this.
Well, no, but you are very, very, very wise in pointing out the idea that there's a huge reason why you do not see the founder of these drone companies talking in front of their products that are in use right behind them. You see a lot of musical scored, beautiful, like lifting up, lifting down, but not a lot of.
I'll tell you what, though, man. As a novelty, imagine a park like the ultimate parkour park, where it's just you're bounding up a story at a time and leaping from building to building. Although if you miss the building, you're still gonna.
Or like at.
I guess it could wind up enough to save your life. Is
Does it make sense as like farm equipment? Like just to, if you are just, Farmer John and you want to get a look at your crops in a different way that you wouldn't normally, to just leap over them?
Possibly. It could give you a short-term vantage point that you might
Or
not,
what if you were doing like specific, let's say there were specifically blighted areas and it's a pain in the butt. Like you're not going to fly over them. You actually have to get down to the roots or something. You have to jump up, see some blight, jump over to it, get down, spray the roots, and then jump up to another spot. Because otherwise you're going to have to, do this weird grid up, down, left, right, Pac-Man move to get there.
Or the Grand Canyon. Imagine going to, say, the Grand Canyon and having one of these and using them to go up and down the... Oh, no?
Well, yeah. I mean, I could see people doing it. Like,
oh, yeah, but I mean,
all
right, so... I didn't. You said Grand Canyon, Bryce, and I immediately went to like Evil Knievel.
Evil Knievel, yeah.
Not jumping off it, but I mean climbing up, the long, arduous pathways up and down.
No, but just like extreme hiking, like just like something between hiking and mountain climbing.
You know what it would be? It would be the equivalent of Segway tours. So just like they have Segway tours in San Francisco or whatever, and they all go through, you could do that because, like, I want to see the Grand Canyon, but I want to see all of it, and I want it to take about an hour. So let's just go, and then it's like you just bounce around. You're like, oh no, this is adorable.
Or like using one of these to like climb like the Chichen Itza. Like,
yes,
just to get up these like
oh my god,
structures.
how quickly will that be the new eye rolling thing where it's like I'm halfway up Chichen Itza and all of a sudden these old ladies start bouncing around like they're lunar superstars.
Oh, look at me!
Like, hey, shut up, jerks! I'm having a religious experience.
This company here, how far along are they? Did they demo somewhere? Like, why are they on our radar?
Now, this is a team of University of Tokyo students, so this is almost certainly a school project. At South by Southwest, they had a non-functioning prototype shown off, and it's the sort of thing where they're showing this at a convention, so there's not even an announcement that this is an actual product, but it's an interesting technology.
Well, and here's what it really does is it's an indicator of that there are lots of cracks and crevices and odd applications that nobody's thought of yet, and this is the kind of insane out of the box thinking that that we're gonna get.
And I do think that there is there's hell, look, I think the one thing that is really interesting that they point out, and I have no idea how this medically works, and I'm sure that we can have doctors tell us that you just can't have a drone halo over somebody in a wheelchair and have them, bound around and stuff like that. But
I think that's the one that really drove me nuts, is a guy gets out of his wheelchair, leaps over some stairs to where there's not another wheelchair waiting for him.
But I mean, some kind of assistance in propping somebody up. I mean, if you look at it as maybe like crutch substitutes or something like that. So maybe not people that don't have feeling in their
people
legs.
That are paralyzed, but maybe just have reduced walking capability.
Yeah. But I think, Brian, you're right. In terms of the everyday usage of it, it's as long as we are in a world where fans cause noise, it will not be socially acceptable to just be whirring your way through Disney World.
So, and again, I don't want to be the guy just pooping all over things because who knows? Maybe somebody will find the right application. After all, the Segway finally found its niche with mall cops and rich magicians in comedy series.
Yep. As was always promised, the final goal.
But outside of that, it really does feel like it feels like they had 3 good ideas, and they're like, yeah, but we need 5 for this demo. And then what about
wheelchair?
Yes.
One of the other interesting examples that they show is like this guy dunking a basketball, and the idea that you could make a sport that takes advantage of this, similar to like those bumper ball soccer games or.
Look, I think it was called Slam Ball. Bryce, see if you can find it. But Slam Ball was basketball.
Oh, trampolines.
Yeah.
Super dangerous. Everybody dying is best
Oh,
I would
really?
imagine.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of broken ankles and legs.
Oh, geez.
It did not.
Oh, look at this court too. It's a mess.
And you got double bounces to deal with. You could send somebody rocketing face first into the metal rim of the basket.
Yeah, no, there have been a few different ways to kind of spice up sports. Ultimately, it's
This is really funny though. Like
I mean, they should be wearing full contact padding. This is insane. They're going to clobber each other.
they had to pad the rim. You could see. Oh my goodness.
But yeah, no, there's definitely a history of trying to gussy up various sports that have had limited success.
All right. Well, take that, University of Tokyo.
No,
Yeah,
I
okay,
want
I got
them.
you, I got
I
you.
want them
I'm-
to succeed because it's so ridiculous. I would love it to be wrong as hell on this.
Okay, let's do another topic here before we get into our Patreon plug. Over the past week, I believe, we unfortunately lost Stephen Hawking.
Yep.
He unfortunately passed away. It has come out now that he submitted a scientific paper, or was a part of a scientific paper that was submitted about 2 weeks before his passing, which the paper talks about possible ways to measure and detect parallel universes.
This is interesting. So this is different from the string theory idea of multiple brains. Like, this is going way back, but in the Elegant Universe, Brian Greene mentions the theory that there are brains, BRANE, and that these are entire collections of strings that make up whatever, and that our universe, our Big Bang event, was two brains smashing into each other, and our universe was born. And the theory was parallel universes, as he described them. The only way we could tell the universe next door would be through gravity waves, and they would be, extremely powerful pulses that could be detected from one to the other. It was all highly theoretical and mathematical. Is that the direction Hawking was working on, or is this a different version of the parallel universes?
Sure. Let me read you what was reported here from Business Insider Australia. The paper's called "A Smooth Exit from Eternal Inflation." According to reporting from the Sunday Times, the paper sets out the mathematics necessary for a deep space probe to collect evidence that might prove other universes exist. The highly theoretical work posits that evidence of the multiverse could be measurable in background radiation dating back to the beginning of time. This, in turn, could be used to measure, could be measured by a deep space probe with the correct sensors. Now, the paper was only had changes approved about 2 weeks ago, so it's not fully published yet. It is on its way, but we know at least generally this is the idea behind it.
So is there a reason he did release it, or it was unreleased?
He is a co-author on it, and revisions have been approved, but it's still yet to be fully published.
Oh, interesting.
Because there are other authors, I think, either still working on it, or
I think
it's just not published.
I think
yet.
this might be my favorite part about Hawking's legacy is he is in the pantheon of folks like, Einstein and, I guess Newton. Nowadays, we don't get surprised by confirmations of Newton's theories, but 100 years after his greatest works, we're still saying Einstein was right. We finally have the instruments to reveal. And the stuff that Hawking is doing, it's going to be centuries that we're going to be seeing headlines. Hawking was right for this reason or that reason.
Now, to broaden this topic out a little bit, what do you think? Let's say this paper goes through in 10 years. In 30 years, we're all still alive and very healthy and doing the Weird Things podcast. What would the discovery of a multiverse theory, or rather a confirmation of a multi-universe theory, or the detection of another parallel universe,
what would that
mean?
change?
What would it mean?
What would that have to do with the price of butter?
Sure.
Because
or in like larger macro scale also.
so Justin and I feel like we've chatted about this a bit. This is one of those long drive chats that I remember telling you. My friend Gus Davis asked me, "Hey, what if we found out for a fact that there were aliens light years away from us? What would that change?" And I told him, like all great philosophical discoveries, kind of nothing, but also kind of everything. You know?
Yeah.
It's. I don't know. What's your take on it?
I think your initial sketch out is kind of where I would go. The only difference is that, we tend to love narratives. And if the narrative now is that, look back at the 60s is like everybody wants to draw everything from, either, is the space race was going on, and now everybody was more, pushing toward the impossible, and we wanted to read books about the great beyond and all the craziness, and that's why all these other things got done, or that past Watergate, we were in a very conspiratorial time, and it meant that we didn't trust authority as much. So I would say if we either in either of those scenarios that we find out that aliens are light years away, or
there's a parallel universe next door.
Yeah, parallel universes, then number one, it becomes a gigantic news story, the likes of which will constantly populate throughout. Like, oh, well, this person adjacent to this thing is now a 72-hour news story because they said a thing or they're close to a thing. But in reality, you're right. We're just going to kind of live our lives and just put a new coat of paint on it.
That's fascinating because I didn't even think about it, because you're right. The biggest effect this would have, because it's not like anything changed, and it's very likely not that we'll ever be able to punch a hole to the other universe or even knock on the door and say, hey, it's us. Like, nothing changes. The biggest significant impact of this being proved true would be a giant cultural shift, whatever that looks like, whatever that means, some kind of confirmation.
And also, I don't even know if there would be. I know that we would say there would be because
Correct.
we always do. But ultimately what happens is, Watergate happens. It's a gigantic news story. And everybody says, oh, yeah, no, we just became more conspiratorial. And you can point to a few, polls and stuff like that. Or you can point to other works of fiction that were greenlit because people were in the mood for it. But does that mean that we really as a people became more conspiratorial, or that we didn't trust authority anymore? I don't know, maybe, but it sure is a great story.
It just means that use of the word, if you could buy stock in the word multiverse, post-multiverse. Well, post-multiverse, does it really matter how our politicians are acting? Yes, no, it still does.
I do think that you could say it would probably lead to more money going into that kind of scientific research. And if we are seeing something that is quantifiable right now, and I wish that we would talk about it more on this podcast with private space travel, but
it's never going to happen, Justin.
Never going to happen.
It's just
one
not really
of the uncovered topics here on Weird Things, but this is something that is going to radically change how we think of life, and it is because a bunch of billionaires got a boner for putting things into space, right? And everything that had to lead up to that is part of the story. But right now, if you were to look at us from 1950 to 2018 and say there is legitimate, before the Black Panther 3 comes out, we could be looking at a manned trip to Mars. That's, from that perspective, oh my God. Like, what? I bet you everybody's got Mars fever, and the Mars jitterbug is taking over all the
Martian jitterbug.
Yeah. But for us, it's like, no, I don't know. I'm more pissed off about how Logan Paul's on Twitch. It's just like the things of the day will always kind of outweigh the larger things, even when they are massive. I mean, like, if we're at the dawning of humanity becoming a legitimate multi-planet species, this is like the biggest thing that we could possibly do for the expansion of our species, for what all of our cultures would ever have a hope. If we ever want to survive beyond, where we would think of now, what we are doing now, recording into a easily, infinitely storable platform and spreading it around the universe is the greatest thing ever. And yet, here I am looking at my phone because I got an app that has like Chinese factories that'll sell me a cheap watch. And I'm like, oh, look, is that worth $5? Let me think about that. It's taking up more time in my day than these gigantic, large scope things.
So what if we get hypothetical and let's say we go forward 200 years in the future. Let's say in 200 years in the future,
still alive, still
we're
doing
still
the Weird
alive and
Things
doing the Weird Things
podcast. Mostly robot, mostly existing in the cloud, but still here.
And so let's
Andrew Main still on assignment.
One day
We're
he'll
really
come back.
looking forward to it.
Well, let's just say, with the following assumptions that we do find out that a multiverse theory is possible, and let's say, next week we are going to have a viewport into some other parallel.
So not the ability to travel, but it's like we have
Like a
enough
porthole.
information that we can see into the other world.
Yeah. What do you think is the best case and worst case scenario of that very specific hypothetical situation? The idea that we could stare into a completely different universe or a parallel.
I would like to think that if we were to take this hypothetical one step further, the worst case scenario is a version of me that is in a better shape and wearing more expensive clothes comes to visit me and says, "Oh, really? I'm out of here." Now, I was thinking, and it's an awkward moment. It's like, were you going to take my place? And he's like, yeah, I mean, I thought that, but you, I mean, it's made me thankful for my life. I'll tell you that.
So he goes up, he sees, he looks at you right in the eye. He's like, so you chose to go to Syracuse, huh?
Yeah. And he, okay, well, podcasting. That wasn't just a phase? Oh, okay. Yeah, all right. Cool. Anyway, see you later. Just write that down.
And then you're like, oh, did that make it over? It's like, yeah, I sent you the thought. We have thought transmitters and everything. In fact, I came to collect my royalties on all this IP you're using.
Yeah, I've been trying to steer you down a more profitable path with no avail, by the way.
Okay, cool. Because I'm like, part of when I read this, I thought, oh, hey, how different is this from, say, the plot of the show Counterpart?
Well, I would assume very, very different, because I assume parallel universes, if theoretically, I would imagine that they all have the same origin point, possibly at different times or whatever. Yeah. So the likelihood that it's a neighborhood next door in which there's even a planet Earth, in which there's even a Milky Way is vanishingly infinitely small, right? Because chaos theory, you can start with virtually the same identical seed, and very quickly everything's unrecognizable. And in the 13 or so billion year history of the universe, the odds of us having this same little planet, very small. But let's say it did.
Cool. Okay.
Let's say it did.
Okay.
Then in some way, and this is kind of a weird thing, this I would even say in 300 years, this would not be a hypothetical. This would be a reality. And it wouldn't be because we punched a hole to the universe next door. It would be because in 300 years, I can easily picture us having the processing power to model our current world so well that we can roll it back to, let's say, 1800s, and Lincoln doesn't get assassinated, and then roll it forward so well that each individual person can show up and you can have conversations with AI bots exactly modeling based on all the existing data. Or let's say you roll it back to last week, right? Let's say 300 years from now, systems are so advanced, quantum computing so powerful, memory infinite, there's a global brain or whatever. You could say, roll it back to last week. Show me what would have happened had this shot made it before the buzzer at this game. And this isn't even necessarily hypothetical at this point. I think we can actually get the benefit of that without ever having to break physics to do it.
So a miniverse.
A mini,
basically.
well, a teeny verse, is a microverse.
So you would just be manipulating this teeny verse to find out like what would have happened if you would have gotten the nerve to ask that girl for a number or something like that.
I would imagine.
That almost sounds like, and this is getting cyclical, because then, like, who is to say that that's not exactly what's happening to us right now?
And the chat is right on that.
Right.
Tinvec says, Brian, that's the actual argument that we live in a simulation right now. And it's not a bad argument. And wouldn't it be interesting if it wasn't true for us, but we made it true for someone else?
We ended up being the very top level.
Yeah. And the more I think about
you know
it,
what? I think, but I also think if you were making one of those universes, you would set it so that they thought they were the top level, and it seemed like they were the top level.
I would set it and forget it.
Here's like a
different
science
god,
fiction
Brian Brushwood.
Like, what if we had a parallel universe that was remarkably consistent with our own world, similar countries and cultures and languages and stuff like that? All those kind of develop. But what doesn't happen is like what needs to happen in most science fiction stories, where it's like all of our grandparents met all of our great grandparents, and everybody is kind of like gone through the exact same genealogical thing. Instead, you just need to find, through whatever calculations, the person who's kind of the most genetically close to you. And so maybe your dad never met your mom or whatever, but now there is somebody that basically shares where you are at the same time, but instead of it being like an exact version of you, it's just like, Eddie Giuseppe is like my other person. He like waits tables in Italy, and
So-
I'm just like, oh, I guess you're me.
So the one thing I would insist upon on that, let's say whether it be a program running all the simulations or whatever, is I need you to filter out all the versions in which there's a better version of me. Only show me the scrubs.
Vanity
Yeah.
universal simulation.
Yes, exactly. Let's simulate not just
so
one
you're-
universe, but thousands of them, so I can feel good about
That are
where
all
I'm at.
lesser than
This
me.
is,
Yes.
by the way, the yin and yang of Brian and I is, I'm like, the worst case scenario is a better version of me shows up and is judgmental. Brian's like, the best case scenario is I get to find all the worst versions of me, judge them performatively.
Oh my gosh. Well, if you want the best version of this show,
Nicely done. Nicely done.
you can support us over at patreon.com/weirdthings. Tell them what they get, guys.
You know what? You get smug satisfaction. You want to see the lesser version of you? Look in the mirror if you've not used Patreon. But if
Look
you
us
have
up.
used
A
it,
little antagonistic.
look at an old picture of you from before you used Patreon.
That's a fact, folks. Look, it's scientifically proven. Patreon equals happiness. If you are happy, then head on over there and make us even happier by way of money, by donating to this show. Look at this. You can get your custom RSS feed. Science thought that this was impossible until very recently, that you could get a custom RSS feed that you can put into the podcatcher of your choice and make sure that you get After Things, the show that we do after Weird Things that focuses more on business and entrepreneurship and creativity. Hey, get up off your ass and do something, because you listen to After Things, and we will give you all of our advice as to how to do it. You get it early if you're a Patreon. So go ahead and do it. What did he say? Hey, what are you not happy? Get happy and then go over to patreon.com/weirdthings.
That's right. And hey, it helps make sure that the show keeps happening. This is the second week without Andrew. A couple years ago, that probably would not have resulted in episodes
You know what?
happening.
We don't need to look into an alternate reality. We can look at actual history,
History.
when we went entire months while he was on assignments without doing episodes. But all that changed thanks to you guys at patreon.com/weirdthings.
By the way, I think someone, I don't know if it was Leon who runs the BBpedia videos account, was saying that Weird Things' 300th episode was like a week or two ago.
Wow. I believe it, man.
yeah.
It's been a hot minute.
It's been a minute. But thank you, everybody who supports us.
And also, we need to redo all of our Patreon. Like that literally just needs, we just need to all get together. Like all of us that do these Patreons together, we just need to reshoot all of them because like we have just been doing them for so long. Like we've been doing this for so long, and we've had Patreon for long enough that now it's like, I look at that and like Brian's studios completely different from where it is. I was shooting that at the Go Game office. Like Andrew is pretty much where he was, but you know,
also
it was,
looking ageless and timeless and the same as he always does.
Oh God, this Dorian Gray weirdo.
So we have one last story here. This one, I'm interested in to hear your takes on it. A few weeks back, one of these weeks when Andrew was gone, we talked about Humanzees. You guys remember Humanzees?
Oh yes, disturbing thoughts.
These are the idea of via some sort of insemination process that a hybrid between a human and a chimpanzee, because they're so genetically similar and we believe them to be on the same evolutionary timeline, that there's a middle species between the two that through hybridization could exist, a humanzee.
Yeah, my virtual Andrew simulation wants to correct you and say that there was a common branch somewhere back behind us, but if what you're proposing would be like a middle cousin, like we're not,
sure,
yeah, we're not evolved. Neither of us are evolved from each other, but maybe there's a middle version somewhere in between.
Very good point. Because there are other hybridization animals, ligers, labradoodles, labradors and poodles.
Well, no, those are all dogs. Dogs can all.
But it's interspecies.
No, those aren't species. Breeds. So a species is defined by because everything's amorphous, right? Animal. Every species or many species can copulate with each other,
sure,
but they don't bear any kind of animal that can self-replicate. For example, like a mule is what, a donkey and a horse or something. And a mule is sterile; it can't make another mule. Same thing, I think, with the liger, I believe. Whereas dogs,
sure,
as we know, they can all make fertile dogs after theirs. So.
I'm just going based off of this article I'm about to bring, which called them subspecies.
Okay, great, got it.
And so this is a partially opinion piece from David P. Barish over at Nautilus from their 58th issue, making the argument that maybe with the ability to fine-tune genetic markers, that maybe it's time to create a humanzee. So on the surface, what is your reaction to that?
This is
thesis?
like the reverse argument for eugenics. So some may say it sounds just like eugenics, but so eugenics back in the early 20th century had the thesis that by interbreeding with lesser people, they would say anything from the mentally infirm to the Irish, because it was a very racist movement.
Yeah.
That we were weakening the species, but when in fact it's the opposite, because the more highly diverse as a species that species is, as the environment changes, something that was a detriment, think of sickle cell anemia is a detriment, but except for when you have malaria, and all of a sudden you're just like, ooh, I wish I had some of that sickle cell anemia, and obviously humanity benefited greatly from somebody who had the quote unquote genetically defective makeup of Stephen Hawking and ended up being a huge contributor to society.
Yeah.
This kind of takes that to the extreme, where it's saying, let's be even more diverse. Let's be diverse in ways that aren't even possible by old-fashioned mating within our species, which I think triggers a repugnance, the same repugnance that man, this is a weird thing to say. I'm going to really try to thread this needle. Eugenics ultimately was an aesthetics-based argument that was factually wrong. It turns out that it is better to have lots of diversity and lots of interbreeding for the health of a tribe, of a culture, of a society. Likewise, I feel the repugnance of the idea of splicing in humanzee, but I have to give pause, knowing the cautionary tale of what was obvious to everybody in the days of eugenics. I wonder if the repugnance I feel right now, 100 years from now, will look like horrifically backward thinking to my Human Z great-great-grandchildren.
So to kind of sum of your conflict here is that you're not sure if this benefits humanity to do this or the human gene pool.
Well,
it boiled down.
that's what my gut says,
Yeah.
but then my brain says that's what people thought about eugenics. They thought it was gross to interbreed with different races, and they were wrong. And so I have my gut instinct, and then it immediately is followed by, they were wrong, you're probably wrong. And this is a really interesting idea.
So the baseline of the repulsion, beyond, I guess the baseline is just that you would try to do something like this, and that this is a macabre pursuit that would yield, little scientifically and be cruel on the other end of it. But to explore that cruelty, the issue is that you are creating a freak that will die because it will live a short and painful life, and what is the benefit of that, right? So what is this article?
Well, this article is saying that not only might it be possible to do a Human Z, but there's a moral imperative now that we have the tools to start tinkering with it.
Well, not quite. So Barish's part of Barish's argument actually centers around the idea of trying to. This is a pretty long piece. I recommend people check this out at Nautilus. That
what would we search for to find it at Nautilus?
You could look up issue 58.
Okay,
it's in their 58 issue. It's time to make human chimp hybrids is the headline.
That is a bold shot called.
But the idea is that
sounds like a Gawker headline. Guys, it's totally time to make human chimps hybrids.
So part of the argument is that we as humans exist on the planet in a world where we see ourselves, humanity, and all others, which is animal kind, basically.
Oh, so they're saying that is an unhelpful social distinction, and that bridging that gap, creating hybrids, would wear away at that us versus man. The very idea of man versus nature is no longer a helpful idea, right, because man is of nature, and a human chimpanzee hybrid might help to erode that idea.
Right. Basically the idea of, well, on a large scale, if we soften this edge between these two ideas of the superior human and the animal thing, that we may treat animals en masse better than we currently do.
Right. Because there's certainly...
Oh, wait. Oh, that's the moral argument? The moral argument is that we need to reframe how we think of animals?
Yeah.
I don't know about all that. I just think that's like, oh, we need to go to space to make Tang and Velcro. Like, yeah, that might happen, but you need better reasons to make a Human Z than just people might have more sympathy for the chimpanzee in the end.
I'm gonna quote his article here. On the other hand, it seems equally likely that faced with individuals who are clearly intermediate between human and ape, it will become painfully obvious that a rigid distinction between the two is no longer tenable. He makes the statement that the lives of those intermediate beings would probably not be very good, and
that's this is some Island of Dr. Moreau stuff happening.
Sure,
but when you take our inherent disgust out of it, it certainly would be a rich treasure trove of information, but it would also be laden with insane amounts of I think some would call it unnecessary suffering. Man.
All right, here, Brian. Let's say this guy all of a sudden black helicopter lands on his lawn.
Right.
Which is weird because he lives in Brooklyn, and so it's a very tiny helicopter.
The helicopter comes down, lays out a lawn, and then lands on it.
And then lands
blocking traffic.
Mirrored sunglasses, trench coat guy, with a briefcase comes in and says, "We've been reading your writing in that one magazine, and we, the United States government, want to set up a black site where nobody will ever know. It's some part of the Pentagon's budget that will just kind of go into it. You are here only for scientific study, so you'll be overseen by the top, the top of the top in terms of military science, but we believe that there is a value in experimenting with this kind of stuff, but we also know that humanity is not that right now the world is not ready to like watch the step by step of how the sausage is made. Maybe if there are medical breakthroughs that we can bring back from such experimentation, then you can live your beautiful dream of making humans look at chimpanzees better. But right now, this is just going to be you experimenting out there. Now, Brian, I'm asking you, your moral judgment. You know that this is happening. Do you feel good or bad about this black site being set up?
I think I would feel bad, but that's all tinged with like, is that what I want my tax dollars? I'm John Stosseling it. The government wants to make humanzees.
Give me a banana.
And forget, it's not the government. It's Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel's helicopter lands right next to the government.
He's seasteading. He finally does his seasteading. He's like, hey, seasteading, not a joke, not a fad. Actually happened. Nobody's discovered it. It's like Kong Skull Island. It's under a perpetual
We
cloud.
have all chimpanzees and no gawkers.
Yeah. It's a beautiful wonderland.
He takes this guy, and it's like, and he's like, do you have the Jurassic Park thing on? He's like, yeah, it's I don't know. It's my thing. I built it. I like
The radio's
it.
broken. I don't really know what's going on.
So it's private. Are you okay?
So I guess the question is, if I go on a tour of this, I guess a lot of it depends on what I see. So let's say all I do is I receive photos that conclusively prove it's being done. The question is, do I blow the whistle and say, this is a terrible thing that's happening, we've got to stop it? Do I rally the troops? Oh, boy.
So one of the... No, go ahead.
Well, I mean, in some ways, that's what's already happening with animal testing labs. There is significant benefit to some. There's significant benefit to some animal testing, and there's insignificant benefit to some animal testing. And some of it is fruitless and cruel. Some of it is humane and beneficial, and there's all kinds, and not only beneficial, hugely beneficial, not just for humans but for the entire planet. And so as a result, like, am I inherently against animal testing? No, I'm not.
Yeah, but you're the key, the operative phrase there is animal period.
Well, but there's also human testing, right? There's psychological experiments, there's drug trials, there's double-blind things, and some of it ends up going terribly and creates a lot of suffering for humans. You know what? Now that you put it this way, if I'm okay with animal testing and I'm okay with human testing, I think logically I have to be okay with animal-human testing.
You don't think that there are a few stops along the road before you're creating humanzees between like I'm going to sign up on my own will for a trial if I'm a human, like I'm going to receive payment, I'm going to understand the risks as they're spelled out to me.
Maybe this might be a side effect of me growing up or going to college in Austin, Texas, where everybody knew who PPC Pharmaco was. And if you've ever lived in Austin, you know who PPC Pharmaco was, because if you needed some cash, they would sign you up with a drug trial. You didn't get to pick your drug. You didn't get to pick what happened to you afterwards. And I heard everything from my first assistant when I was on the road touring with Magic was one of the first people to test out a little thing called Xanax. And he was not the most effective assistant I've ever had on the road. Meanwhile, another guy made a lot of money. He was young and healthy, and he said, "Yeah, they told me it's an Alzheimer's drug." And it's like, "Do you feel anything?" He's like, "No, I don't feel anything."
Yeah, I feel like I've got some Alzheimer's.
Yeah. Well, and he made like $2,000 in a month, and wow. And then separate from that, floating down the Guadalupe River, somebody is drunk out of his mind in a tube, floating down, and our group floats past him, and his feet are gnarled. He looks like a clicker from The Last of Us, just gnarled stuff coming off his feet, and he's just like, "Don't do pharmaco, guys. It's a bad thing."
Oh, Jesus.
So, is it bad that pharmaco existed? That's for history to say.
So one of the examples that is brought up in this is the idea that we are using animals and using chimerization basically to grow human organs in pigs.
Yeah, that's right. And that is, I think, I would say unquestionably a good thing, but there are ethical concerns about the more we bridge that gap. What if pig viruses suddenly they morph into those middle grounds, and then they're able to make the leap? Because right now there's a lot of pig diseases that humans can't get. Once we have these pig-human hybrid organs, I mean, it's great that we're saving people with new livers and new bladders and so on, but now we've reduced the barrier of challenges for a pig flu to jump over to a human flu, which might be terrible. But if you're theorizing that we've now, mastered the video game called How Life Works genetically, then that's something that might be able to work. Man, it's almost like this is a big heady issue, and it's not really up to Brian Brushwood.
No, it's not. Justin, do you have a sense on this? On like where just
my instinct is that, look, science is built to break barriers, and there are some barriers for which are harder to push down, and I think that kind of the beauty of the scientific method and those that would make their living in it in research is that there are kind of natural cultural things for which are protected. My biggest issue would be more that, like, it would be a intensely cruel life to bring into the world that would almost assuredly live its short life in pain and then die. And then the question is, okay, well then, are we doing that repeatedly until we get one to live? Like, is this?
I mean, that's how life did it. I mean, that's how Planet Earth ran that experiment. Only much more cruel and with no guidance.
Well, and
Certainly
part of the argument here is that we do the exact same things with perfectly healthy animals for our own gain. Right? Like, between factory farming or, creating chimeras to grow human organs. If
I guess in that point, then you can say, hey, look, we already make these moral things. We just don't think of them as moral compromises because we like that steak, dog. Ooh, let's get that chicken nugget, right? Like, so why not do it for a more scientifically, interesting reason other than just like, we kill animals all the time.
Yeah.
But do we kill human? Do we kill a half human all the time? I guess you want to know what I'm kind of coming around to this guy's point of view that, like, the more you think about it, the more you're like, no, my issue is the half human part. Like, am I creating a human, half of a human to kill it?
Interesting. Well, it's certainly a heavy topic.
Man, it's a big one when we can't solve it in 15 minutes of a podcast. That's a real head scratcher, this one. I guess it is challenging.
But if you have your take on it, for our listeners out there.
Oh, yeah, please write in. This would be a fun one. I would love to hear everybody's take on this.
You can find the email in the show notes.
In fact, actually, can we commit to doing like a mailbag next week on this one if everybody writes in?
Yeah, if we get some, send them in. You find the email address in the subject line in the show notes of where you're listening to this now. Do you guys have any picks?
Oh, do we not want to give it out on the air, or is that
Neshcom@gmail.com.
Okay,
just
right.
put weird things in the subject line.
Yeah, neshcom@gmail.com. We will do a mailbag if you write in. So neshcom@gmail.com. Put weird things in the subject line because he's not going to read literally every email to find out if it's a weird things topic. Just put weird things in the subject line.
all you have to do.
Folks.
Do you guys have picks?
Yes, I do.
What's up,
I
Brian?
am unbelievably excited about this pick. I just finished it, Justin. I just finished it, and I need you to hurry the hell up so I can talk to you about it. The book is Ryan Holiday's Conspiracy. It is all about Conspiracy by Ryan Holiday. It sounds like he's the one with the conspiracy.
No.
It's about the unbelievable true tale of how the Hulk Hogan decision broke Gawker, and the reveal after the fact that Peter Thiel for 6 years had run a secret conspiracy to take down Gawker, and the seed of it all began when Gawker outed him as gay. It also ties in. Number one, it's all told through Ryan Holiday's incredible historical perspective. This guy reads so much philosophy and history, and it all comes through. Fantastic quotes and lessons from all throughout history, successful and unsuccessful conspiracies. Lots of Machiavelli in there. Also, unbelievable access. He spoke to everyone. He spoke to Hulk Hogan. He spoke to the founder of Gawker. He spoke to the guy who published the article that was in question. He spoke a lot to Peter Thiel. He spoke to the secret unnamed Mr. A, who is who as a young 20-something had a few minutes to speak with Peter Thiel and say, hey, I have an idea on how you could destroy Gawker. And so began a conspiracy of two that grew. And he talks about how close the clean getaway was and why conspiracies fail after the fact. And he makes the unbelievable counterintuitive claim that that we should live in a world with more conspiracies, not fewer. And he makes a lot of cases for, America was built on a conspiracy. There's a lot of genuinely good things that happen in secret where people commit to change the world. And it's just great. I can't wait for you guys to read it and talk to me about it.
Cool.
So I read the AMA, and I've not read of. I know you're a fan of that dude's previous.
He wrote a book, Ego is the Enemy, that was literally life changing for me. He wrote The Obstacle is the Way, which is a book on stoicism and just doing what it takes to get things done. Lots of Marcus Aurelius in there. Really good stuff.
I read his AMA, and I was heartened to read it because it kind of, maybe in confirmation bias, seemed to confirm part of what I had read into the Gawker Peter Thiel thing, which was that, yes, Peter Thiel was actively trying to kill Gawker, but in a very interesting way. Like he knew that Gawker was, to metaphorically put it in an abstract, Gawker had a heroin addiction, and sure, it could continue to do heroin safely, but every once in a while, it would get really, really, really close to the danger zone, probably more often than they wanted to admit. And, so Peter Thiel's way of killing them was just by, maybe putting some dirty heroin around. Never to them directly, but just around their dangerous patterns of behavior, maybe just laying a landmine here or there and then efforting things to go bad. So basically, they knew. I don't know why I made that metaphor. Peter Thiel knew that Gawker was pushing the lines of libel, and that they had to prove liable, specifically in the case of public figures. It's intensely, very, very, very hard to do, and you have to show that you did it with malice. And that you put it was
and that it was
a lot
egregious.
of tumblers have to click into place for a jury to do it, to find you guilty of something like that in the case of a public figure. And what it seemed like, at least by the AMA, and I'm excited to read the book, Peter Thiel's thing was like, look, as long as they have not learned their lesson and they keep stepping in these bear traps and then crowing about how awesome they are, that they can step in any bear trap they want and never face any consequences, then I'm going to keep investing in smarter and better bear traps. That was way better than the heroin analogy.
Way better. Way better.
Well, and specifically, there's a moment in the book where he and Mr. A are sitting down thinking through, like, what's on the table. Okay, literally everything's on the table. Everything from, hire a hitman on down. They don't give that example, but just, there's moral issues and there's legal issues and all that stuff. And they realize, well, I have too much to lose. If we get found out, and it's it comes out that I hired private investigators or whatever, that's too big a cost for me. So they end up limiting it to legal methods that will be defensible after the fact, which is a huge limitation if your goal is to give a killing blow to a company that is growing. It was like $150 million valuation at its height, and so what they realize is they have to they also figure out that you can't take them down on the First Amendment. First Amendment is very, very strong, and it's too easy to, there are stronger libel laws in England, but all that's going to do is give them a slap on the wrist. They'll pay a fine, and they'll still be doing their thing. He's like, I want to break this engine. And so it's like, we need a killing blow. We need to catch them doing something that's flat out illegal or could be interpreted as such. And so ultimately, when the trial comes down, you get to a place where one side is arguing First Amendment means you get to say anything you want, period, no matter what. And they never ever. The offense never brings up they address the First Amendment, but they make it very clear. It's like, we're not talking about the First Amendment. We're talking about the criminal act of destroying a person's life by taking stolen materials, taken from a private residence, taking a man and hanging him out to dry the way they did with Hulk Hogan or whatever. Even when you know the outcome to it, the ebb and flow, the sports game, it's like, oh, it's looking good for this side. Oh, it's looking good for that side. Oh, what a huge setback. Oh, what hubris on both sides. He is so even-handed. There are moments he makes Gawker seem positively relatable. It's like you're on their side.
Is this Holiday or Teal?
Ryan Holiday is what he does
in his book.
In his book.
So Holiday in describing it gives Gawker a fair shake.
Correct. Well, and it's up to you to decide if it's a fair shake. But I know that there were times I was very sympathetic to the founder of Gawker, to the guy who published the article. He always takes a moment for every single character to give a very fair, compelling representation of what their position was, and as a result. His thesis of this is, one of the most fascinating conspiracies. Anyway, I don't want to spoil everything. I could go on and on and on about it. This is all stuff I want to talk to Justin about. If
Spoiler alert, don't go to Gawker.com.
Although I will say, if you're curious about the book, that same AMA that I forwarded over to Justin, I think is a good place to read. Just look up Ryan Holiday AMA on Reddit, and you can read through a lot of. He'll do a very good job of pitching the book to you.
And make sure you get the one from 2018. I think he did one in 2017 as well.
Yeah.
Did you ever see? I know, Justin, you saw it. Nobody Speak: Trials of the Free Press.
Yes,
that Netflix doc?
and I didn't like it, and I didn't like it because I think it did a disservice, not only in the Gawker case, but also in the other cases that they brought up that they tried to string together. That I didn't think that the other cases necessarily had much to do with the Gawker case. I think the Gawker case is very, very unique. But also, look, the First Amendment is so protected. It is a very, very, very protected part of our culture, and it has helped me make a living when I was working in that industry, and helps us protect our living that we have now, right? But at the same time, when you are able to have that freedom as a press outlet, you need to know where the electric fences are, and you need to know when to pull back. In fact, knowing when to pull back is the way that you continue to have the license to do everything else that you want to do. And that can up to and include ruin a person's life accidentally. You can publish a bunch of stuff that's like, all right, we screwed up. We accidentally got the wrong name here, and we called somebody a murderer. And now everybody in this town thinks that somebody is a murderer. And you can go to court and say, hey, look, here's the Jar Jar Binks path that we took that accidentally led us to call this guy a murderer, and you will not be charged. I mean, you might settle it or something like that because you don't want to spend the legal fees, but the courts, because of the First Amendment, the courts can say, well, didn't mean to do it. Sorry, Mr. Not murderer. Like, let's make sure that they run that you're not a murderer on the front page. Gawker was a habitual line stepper, and they made their brand line stepping. And I understand. I loved Gawker. I continue to enjoy a lot of the blogs that came out of it. But that was under that leadership. That was what they wanted to build their brand on. And if you continue to try and cross these lines, again, that's what I thought the Teal strategy was like, could have been stopped. Teal's grand plan to kill Gawker could have ended if they would have stopped getting themselves in these kinds of situations.
Well, and like, there's one moment of the book he makes a compelling argument for it could have been stopped with literally one apology. But they're steadfast, all or nothing. We get to do whatever we want. This will never go to trial. You'll never take us. We've got the First Amendment. Like the hubris that they revealed, it's an astonishing, compelling read. I was telling Justin last night I went for a walk and started listening. I didn't want to stop, and I ended up walking 6 miles. It was fantastic.
No, look, I mean, so to the Nobody Speak thing, I think that's a fascinating. I watched that documentary hoping that I would get a kind of fuller picture, and this isn't about Nobody Speak. This is about in general journalism stuff, and including fictional portrayals like the Post and stuff like that, where journalism is ugly. It's workaday. It's boring. It is sometimes messy. It is not the like warrior Christs that descend from heaven and bring truth and vitality to the culture. Hopefully that happens, but like the idea that the narrative of like mean old rich guy picks on young scrappy upstarts, it's more complicated than that, and I think it sends the wrong messages of what journalism and the First Amendment kind of really is, because it is a living relationship with your readership and with the culture at large. And if you are never giving back on anything, you're not being a good steward of what these laws are there for.
Well, that's one of the surprise, again, spoiler alert at the end, he does a brief analysis on how the legal world of law professors reacted to the Gawker decision. And universally, they're like, this doesn't feel like First Amendment has eroded at all. This feels like a very specific niche that in general society is going to be okay with. Just like, rape of, used to be tolerated and is no more. We will look back at the time in the early aughts when the internet was so novel that legit journalism outlets would publish upskirt photos of celebrities not wearing underwear getting out of limos. We will look at that with disgust and horror, just in a similar vein.
Cool. Justin, did you got a pick?
Nobody Speak. Just kidding. No, I watched, we just finished last night, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel on Amazon. This is a series that just came out from Amy Sherman Palladino and her husband. These are the two that brought you the Gilmore Girls. It is kind of loosely based on the life of and the origin story of Joan Rivers. Basically, a woman who decides she wants to go into stand-up comedy, loves stand-up comedy in an era that does not traditionally kind of foster that. And the first couple episodes I really, 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 really liked. And then some of the Amy Sherman Palladino things that I find a little insufferable about, some of the Gilmore Girls and other stuff that she's done sort of rears its head, a.k.a. people talking about their feelings with no movement in the plot for 2 episodes. But other than that, look, if you like the kind of early, the birth of comedy kind of stuff, the birth of stand-up, then you will enjoy it, including fictional portrayals of real life people like Lenny Bruce and kind of the origins of what we now understand to be kind of stand-up, and where it sort of came from its like variety, Borscht Belt kind of beginnings.
Cool. I have a pick. I so much didn't like the previous series of this show that on our Cord Killers year-end countdown show, the
Oh
the
yeah, you
Killies.
gave it a kill. You said don't.
I
You
said-
said die.
I said stop watching Terrace House Aloha State, which was really bad. But they have a new series out called Opening New Doors, and it's fantastic. So if you don't know Terrace House, it is a Japanese reality show that they brought over to Netflix, and it just follows 6 kids living in a house together, who go in trying to find romance and get their career started. And the thing I really didn't like about Aloha State is that it started off with a pretty junky cast of characters, where Opening New Doors starts with like the best, most amazing 6 people, and it is in Nagano this series. So last one was in Hawaii, and now this one is kind of in the more rural, snowy part of Japan, and it's just so great. The ways that it's like on paper very similar to like a real world style show, but the way that it is portrayed as being very like slight and very subtle is really great, you know.
Slight and subtle. Like I mean, you mean Japanese?
Well, okay. But I mean, that is a cultural distinction, right?
Sure,
Like-
sure, sure.
Like it is like so. The first 8 episodes came out to international Netflix. In the Japanese Netflix, it comes out every week. Like the big like fight moment is when a woman yells at this kid that he does not know what he's doing with his life, and he's being obstinate and cocky, and he just needs to like get his stuff together. Where the real world was like very explosive and very physical. It's great. You see like very tender romance bloom, and you see very awkward romance trying to happen and definitely not going to happen. It's really cool. I really think if you haven't tried one yet.
So what brought you back to it after having given it up? Just that it was a new. You're like, all right, I'm giving you one more try.
Yeah, basically, this new series came up, I mean, the past few weeks, really recently, and I had heard good things, and I really loved the first series that they brought to Netflix, which was Boys and Girls in the City. But when I fell off of Aloha State, I was glad to see they maybe recognize that and change direction. So it's really cool, and there's a fun. I actually just found out. So the other cool thing about the show is that it is broken up with these panel segments where these 6 recurring other 6 recurring people, comedians and personalities, will stop in the middle of the show and just talk about everything that's happened in that episode. So it's like, oh my god, can you believe what if this guy said this, and like
These
how
are people who aren't in the
they're not
drama. They're
in-
outside of it.
yeah,
Got it.
They're not in the show. They are like
But they're helping us help shape the narrative.
yeah, like if you were watching it with someone, these are the things that you would talk about with them. Like, can you believe that he tried this awful pickup line with her, and they went through this whole long hour? He asked her to drive on the date, and there's something really refreshing about that, of like having your own built-in response portion. You know, it's one of many really interesting things about the way that show is as a reality show is different from the way we make reality shows in the West.
Awesome.
So I recommend checking that out. Terrace House Opening New Doors. And that's going to do it for the Weird Things podcast today. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, Justin.
I hear Sasquatch knocking at the door. I gotta
Yeah.
go. I gotta go answer
Hey,
that.
thank you for knocking at the door, Sasquatch.
It's been weird. Cool. Good episode. Who is that? It's Callie. Of course it's Callie.
That's a nice coat. What kind of coat is it? Is that just like
Yeah.
a flannel or?
No, it's like a, what is it, like polyester? Just some cheap bomber that I got off of AliExpress.
Nice. Have you heard? What is this? What is this app here?
What is it?
Somebody just turned me on to this last weekend.
Oh, OpenBio asks if it's dubbed. No, it is subtitled. think of
Wish.
I've heard of Wish, but I've never looked at it. I've heard it's a very good way to get cheap crap.
Yes. Like I got it so I could so I could get a bunch of cheap crap, and then I'm like, but now I'm literally just gonna throw all this away.
Yeah.
Like this is just all gonna be
Like what
cheap
sort of stuff
garbage.
are you like clothing or
So it's like I'm looking at there's a lot
Fidget
of batteries.
okay, batteries that'll probably be dead.
Jewelry. There's a laser scope. There's a lens, a telephoto lens for your
For your
phone.
Okay.
There's Faith and Confession, a novel by Charlie Capps,
A book, a physical book?
a physical book.
That's wild.
A lot of headphones.
Yeah.
Here's a secret a recorder pen.
Okay.
It's basically like all the crap you would see at the back of a
Gas
comic book,
station. Yeah.
but for like $1 or free. Like they give you a free gift every like 10 purchases or like now I get one free purchase because I just downloaded the app.
Oh, weird.
It's garbage. It's basically garbage from AliExpress, but they like skinned an app out of it.
I every time I get something from AliExpress, it always comes with like some little tchotchke, you know? It's like last year when I bought
Yeah.
all those jackets, I got like some business, like some black socks and like a packet of dried tea leaves. And a little keychain with a wooden boat on it. I don't know, man. But I've heard about Wish, but I haven't tried it. The thing about the AliExpress mobile app that I don't love is that it will just constantly pester you with like, check out this sale, like with notifications all the time.
Yeah.
Does Wish do that?
I don't know. I mean, no. The Wish app does push notifications like constant.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's the thing I just don't like about it is like, the app was like no good anyway.
Yeah.
And then it was always like, come
Get
by.
out of here.
Yeah.
It's all garbage. Stop it. I'll tell you what, there is I think a market for like curation to that. If like we literally just got an app that's like we troll all this crap. Like we're going to find the gems
The best.
out of this garbage pile, and we're gonna give you one thing a day. You know? Like, I don't know.
Okay, Brian says 1 second.
All right, well, I'm gonna use the bathroom and then we'll rock for after this.
Sure. I have no idea what we'll do for after things, but maybe we'll figure it out. Hi, everybody. Whew. We'll be doing our After Things podcast live in just a few moments here. Let me see what's on Slack. We got some Slack massages. How interesting, rather. Jason sent along a list of possible Modern Rope topics coming in the future that we will shoot. So that's interesting. Okay, well, I know I'm a quiet talker a little bit. My dumb question. Sorry about that. Refractal Studio, one thing a day. Isn't that Woot.com? That is basically Woot. That is basically Woot. Or Meh. Meh does that. Though Meh is usually like rotates a lot of stuff. It's just like, oh yeah, here are knives again. Here's some knives. Have one of these knives. Yeah. So I don't really have a topic for After Things this week.
I got one for you.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, we could talk about our friends over at the Whiskey Tribe and how they built their Patreon launch, and the importance of being community focused, because they are now at
What is their URL?
patreon.com
Is it Whiskey Tribe?
Whiskey Tribe.
Okay. With an E?
Yeah. Yes.
Weird. Thought it was no E, bro.
Well, you'll notice when you get there.
Sure. I'm making a joke.
Oh, okay.
I'm making a joke about the
I
thing.
got it about the distinction.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in fact, it'll be fun because I'll share this with Justin. I don't think he knows anything about it, and I think we can compare notes on what we've done with our community versus what they're doing on theirs.
Okay, very cool. Then we'll do that. You good, Justin?
Yeah.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the After Things podcast. I'm Bryce Castillo, filling in for Andrew Main once again, joined as always with Justin Robert Young
Hey, what's going on, folks?
and Brian Brushwood.
He's on assignment. Andrew Main, on assignment.
That's right. Brian, you said you had a topic for After Things today.
Well, it's a bit of a playground. I want to spoiler alert. This thought began with my pick. I was like, oh, what's my pick going to be? I know what my pick's going to be. And then I was thinking about it. I was like, man, they really have an extraordinary story, and it might be worth it since After Things is an entire program where we talk about what it's like to be an independent creative. And it might be interesting to compare notes on what these folks have done. But Justin, are you familiar with our friends Rex and Daniel over at the Whiskey Vault and the Whiskey Biscuits channel?
So I know them because of you, and I know that they are connected to the Wizard Academy, and that they shamed you on their show because I
hadn't joined their Facebook group. Yes.
Group fast enough.
And that's an important part of the story because in the beginning there was the Wizard Academy channel, and then Daniel Whittington started doing a whiskey sommelier program over at the Wizard Academy. The Wizard Academy is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. It's a business academy that is on this. It takes place in this gorgeous Wizard's Tower. And Daniel, to help encourage interest in taking the whiskey sommelier class and as a public service, started doing whiskey reviews on the Whiskey Vault channel. And before too long, Rex Williams joined him, and Rex knew actually, I don't know. The impression that they give is that, Daniel is the sommelier and Rex is just there to mooch. So they call it this the Somm and the Mooch. And the channel has been growing. And as a matter of fact, Whiskey Vault channel is up to, I want to say, like 80,000. They're about to get that silver play button over about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And around the time they began this venture, Daniel came on 3 Modern Rogue episodes, and they were all fantastic. They performed very, very well for us. And they were a fantastic outward-facing introduction to get people into his stuff. Because all of this is on Wizard Academy property, it all has to be a nonprofit. That means that you can never have a sponsor. You can never solicit any money, and everybody takes this very, very seriously and respectfully. But it was clear that they were building up a group of people who were very, very passionate about it. And they took that energy, and those people wanted to have conversations about, what whiskey to buy and recommend. I recommend you buy this. I don't recommend you buy that, because that's something that when it comes to nonprofits, as I understand it, you have to have extremely clear hygiene. I remember all the way back when the folks, now Double Toasted, and before that Spill.com, before even that, they were The Real Deal, and they were on Austin Cable Access Television. And I would show up to do magic because I wanted to promote for my, maybe I had a live show or something. So I would do magic on the show. And when it came time to talk about the live show I was doing, they would say, Brian Brushwood has a live show. We are not telling you to go see his live show, but it will be taking place at this time. Either go or don't go. It is up to you. That is a statement of fact. So there are these hygiene things you have to do, and with good reason, because it's very easy to blur the lines. So you got this group of people who becomes passionate about this topic and subject. And obviously, they're going to want to guide the discussion to other places. So basically, they create a clubhouse outside of it. They're like, look, take it to this other clubhouse. You guys can talk about whatever you want, and we'll show up and say hello to you. And so they also, realizing that some people don't want, they create a Facebook group called the Whiskey Tribe. But they realized that, well, we have to have another presence because we want to start a distillery, Rex and Daniel. And and they were like, well, obviously we can't ever talk about any of this on the Whiskey Vault channel. So we're going to start a brand new channel. Similar, in many ways, it's kind of similar to the challenge I had to overcome with
Game School on the Modern Road.
Correct, exactly. Yeah. And they create a new channel called Whiskey Biscuits that is them telling the story of from concept to grain to building the building to aging it. This story will, I don't want to say end, but will culminate in the decanting, 8 years from now of their 8-year scotch or whiskey or whatever, and the experimental stuff they're doing. So you got this really passionate audience. And of course, in the Whiskey Biscuits channel, mainly it's the story of their distillery, but they have the ability to say, do this and don't do that, that kind of stuff. The Whiskey Tribe Facebook group is the lifeblood and of this, and it's doing very, very well. They hit 5,000, and they started a waiting list because they wanted it to be exclusive. And as a matter of fact, the Donna Patreon, Patrick Cohn, is one of the prominent members there. They finally got me signed up in there, and man, these people are passionate, and they're not just passionate about their whiskeys, they're passionate about each other, right? A lot of people are discovering each other through their mutual love of whiskey. Now, you'll notice everything I've said so far has not involved a single dollar figure.
No.
This
supposedly the distillery would eventually sell
sure,
products.
but not now. So it's like they had to find investors and all that stuff is expensive. Sure. Everything they've done so far has been for free on top of their day jobs. All of them. And I'm sure, you and I can relate to that. Tell me if this sounds familiar to you, Justin. Doing all this on the side, on top of your day job. And this weekend, Saturday morning, they finally launched a Patreon video. They launched their Patreon. They decided to go contributions per month. And how do you think they did, Justin?
Well, I'm looking at it right now.
Not bad, right? So in one day, they had already reached $8,000 per month. By the end of the next day, they were at $11,000 per month. As we're recording this right now, it is Monday, about 48 hours, just over 48 hours since they launched, and they are now at 739 patrons and $12,000 per month.
Which is a very high, anomalous high. Like, remember when the Modern Rogue launched, because we had the high level tier, the Titan package.
Correct.
We had someone get that in the first month.
Correct.
And so it kind of
it threw our numbers off. We looked pretty dope there for about a month, and then we ended up at 3,000. Now, meanwhile, I am very proud to report that since adding the articles, a lot of people are digging the articles. A lot of people are happy to see cracked folks landing on their feet with us, and it has been steadily climbing. And in fact, we're up to 4,200 now. But that's a huge deal. Like they're rocketing forward. I was hanging out with them the night before, and they were arguing. And I don't know how much of this is being sort of setting low expectations and just being careful.
I don't know. I feel like those if the story is, and I'm interrupting you before you tell it, that they thought it was not going to be all that much, or they had a low expectation and then it exploded. That kind of is the story that we experienced, that Mikey Newman, our friend from Movies with Mikey, certainly experienced. It's funny because I think the way that we experienced Patreon when we first got on it, when it was a lesser known platform, specifically in the realm of podcasting, was that we kind of felt like, we got in while the cotton was high. Like we really bled out Patreon for all that money when we had the Night Attack and Cord Killers and stuff like that. When it's like now, as Patreon is more of a brand, is more of something that people understand, that we are further away from the dark days of the internet, where a creator would be shamed for e-begging or something like that, that now it's like, oh no, starting a Patreon now is, if you have a lot of goodwill and you got a good pitch and you can figure out a way to kind of bring more value for the dollar. Look, they have a tremendous Patreon right now. It'll be interesting to see as they go forward what exactly the shakeout is, because they are promising things. Like there is going to be an element of a delivery here, but I don't think that that's in any way a bad thing. I mean, that's the new model here,
well, and keep in mind also that the whole purpose of what they're doing is saying, would you like to be a part of the story of our distillery that we're launching?
Yes.
And would you like to have your name in on the wall and be one of our all-stars? It's watching the video. They did a very, very smart job of making it very community focused. Number one, they built the community first. The Whiskey Tribe group on Facebook is now around 6,500 members, and slowly climbing, assuming people continue to answer the questions correctly and get in the club. But they did more, because I told Bonnie and I told Jason the numbers, and they were like, how on earth are they doing that on one day to go to $8,000? And I was like, you got to understand, they did not say, we do videos, please give us money. They said, we have built a community in our spare time. They gave a 20-year business plan that ends with the idea of building a whiskey castle near the whiskey, the Wizard Academy.
Yeah.
They didn't treat Patreon as a way to cash in goodwill. They went to their investors with a 20-year business plan with tangible takeaway benefits at every phase of the entire story, and tangible membership benefits at every level. And in fact, their biggest regret is I think they had 50 of some slot, and those have all run out. And
50 of their $50 per month.
The Whiskey Tribe Baron. Yeah. And so, they're treating it like a business. And I got to tell you, I think we're going to start seeing more of this kind of very long-term, very long-form business plan. Essentially, that's of course what you think of. It's an ongoing Kickstarter, but this is more of a Kickstarter than most Patreons, because most are, I make a thing. You want to buy the thing? Give me Patreon so I continue to make the thing.
I think that's in our world, certainly. But when you look at a lot of like cosplayers and stuff like that, they are very focused on sign up and get things. You are going to get a steady stream of product from me, be it digital or physical. But we are going to do this. I think what they are doing here is great, but what it really heralds is that paying money for things on the internet has now been fully democratized. Like we now, the value of Patreon, and this is when everybody, I get it, Patreon can screw up sometimes. Patreon can do dumb things. They can message wrong. They can be a problem. But it is, whenever I see people getting really spicy about Patreon online, I'm like, you know what they mean to us, though. Like, yes, we should hold them responsible, but like the brand, Patreon, the brand is invaluable to us and invaluable to you if you ever want to do something that raises money. And it's like the fact that it is now a thing where you can build a subscription model and not have, I mean, look, how much did it take for you mentioned Corey Martin from Double Toasted and Spill and The Real Deal. They built up a gigantic community, and then they have to run their own white label subscription service that is by its nature behind a paywall, by its nature foreign to people that are going to come in. It is their own clubhouse.
You can either mine the core or you can expand the base. And by definition, that is mining the core. It's very little discoverability with that kind of setup.
Yes.
But he's also saying that they've had to roll their own technological element of it.
Well, and now it's problematic because the only way for them to bust out into the Twitch sphere or whatever is because so much of this is for members only. They have to create a new property if they want to have it be on the Twitch channel.
Which is funny because the last time I was down there last year and I was talking to Corey about it, because there were draw your own conclusions of why I was talking to Corey about Twitch. But like, he's talking to me about this And he's like, yeah, man, I think we're gonna do some new content. And I'm like, man, it's like only another person who does content for a living can look into the eyes of somebody saying those words and know that their eyes are like devoid of the content that that your mouth is promising. Like, it was just 1,000-yard stare of like, yeah, no, we'll do it. It'll be a whole new thing. And like, it just, his brain is thinking about his calendar and where he's going to put it on the gigantic full to the brim calendar where he's already gotten done with a 6-hour live stream that they do every single week on Sundays and stuff like that.
And by the way, that's another pick, man. Double Toasted. They do premium content. They are smart and funny.
Here's all I'm saying. If the spill to Double Toasted cataclysm were to happen today, I think that there would be no question that you would push them, as somebody who was involved with that at the time, to be like, no. Do a Patreon. You can have the best of both worlds. You can gate your certain amount of content. You can have a subscription platform. But now the subscription platform is the brand. It is a discoverable brand that people have in general warm feelings about, even if sometimes the brand is itself can vex those that are paying the most attention to it. In general, Patreon means dreams. Patreon means the content that I want, the creators that I love being able to live their lives. That is so effing valuable. And I think that's what you're seeing. People who are what Whiskey Biscuits is doing and what Mikey's done, what a lot of people who have peeled out of other larger organizations have done, is look at what we did, not to give ourselves break our arms patting ourselves on the back, but it's like, we threw it out there and realized that there was gold in them Thar Hills. They've brought business plans and mining equipment,
Yes. And we're like, oh, well, we just had this bucket and we just keep finding gold. And they're all like, that's adorable, kiddo. Now, if you don't mind, this multi-conglomerate monstrosity is going to be putting some steam engines in here. We're going to extract all the gold.
Or even just understanding, they're like, oh, for the amount of effort that you're putting into, you can buy very reasonably priced mining equipment. And we're like, yeah, we got this bucket.
Well,
here's all I'm going to say. There's a reason why we always joke about, man, we should reshoot these Patreon videos. And they're like, hey, look at this multi-tiered solution where we're going to push those that have $200 to give us $200 a month. We're going to push those who have $50 to give $50 a month. They're building things for that.
Yes.
They're building things to attract them because they understand that this is something that you can do.
Even on the day of the launch, I sent a text to both of them that said, number one, congratulations. Number two, I'm going to steal all of this when we relaunch the Modern Rogue Patreon. Because there's a couple of deadlines where we're going to be kind of at a pivotal moment as we head into the summer, and we're going to have to make some big decisions. So I think we're going to do a relaunch campaign, which will be that'll be a whole thing that we'll talk about on here because do you get multiple at-bats? Do you get multiple bites at the apple? That's something I don't know, really. But I do know that our story has changed a lot on the Modern Rogue since we launched the Patreon back in September. Mm-hmm. The numbers have changed, and so the questions we have to ask and the benefits that we offer are going to have to change as well. And all of this is premature for me to. I don't have any details at all.
I had not heard of this at all. Even
one of the beneficiaries of the Modern Rogue Patreon is very excited.
Well,
to learn the details of how his livelihood is going to be affected.
Without divulging too many details, it's like now, we didn't know we were going to be running a publishing arm of the Modern Rogue when we launched the Patreon back then, and we're doing our best to evolve it. But I think it merits a new. If the vision changes, it seems like a new launch video and a new description of the new plan would have a place.
100%, and I do think you have multiple at bats, as many as you want, because what we are seeing here and what we have seen in the past, in some of the ones that have really, really, really blown up, is Patreon. A launch of a successful Patreon is narrative plus apparatus. And narrative is the thing that we got early on, of like, hey, we just got kicked out of Dad's house at this other network, and so now where like either we're gonna stop doing this, well, we'll imply that we'll stop doing this, or we're gonna do this thing, like and then, oh my God, like we jumped off a cliff with Wile E. Coyote wings, and it turns out we're flying. Isn't this amazing? Let's all do that. Now, that's where I think, like, now you look at it and it's like, okay, well then, what happens on when the narrative gets old or the narrative goes away? Why am I still subscribing to this on month whatever? You know, and
our hope, fingers crossed, is because we continue to deliver exceptional value that is belongs a part of your day and value for value.
But even then,
sure.
Like you look at the Cord Killers. Every time I load up the Cord Killers, I have a fun moment where I get to see the title of the YouTube video that it's attached to, and it says Cord Killers coming to you independent 2014. And I haven't watched that video in a very long time, but I bet it hasn't aged very well.
I'll bet you're right. And I think, I'm starting to get the idea. Maybe we should update all of our videos on our Patreon.
I'm saying it would be worth a trip to Austin if we could all just be there. In fact, we probably should have done it when we were literally all just in Austin a week ago. But look, here's all I'll say. What they've realized is that it's not, look, that narrative will always be there. And the people that are hardcore, that love what you do and just want to have, they carve out a little bit of their budget, or they forget that it's there, but they don't give a rat's ass. That will always be there no matter what. The difference is, well, that'll be there probably for a couple bucks. And maybe a few people that have a lot of money will let it ride for more than that. But past that, you need to think about what that management is. If you really, like if you want to look at $12,000 a month, again, it'll be interesting to see how much they take home, because there is some promises for physical stuff and mailing stuff, and as you know,
sure,
running a store.
But that's also baked into the fact that they're opening a business. And here's the part that that we hadn't considered before is their numbers are not super big. They are not Philip DeFranco numbers. They are not every time we publish a video it gets 1 million views. And yet to go from and that's part of the reason their estimates, or Rex's estimate. Rex was the pessimistic one. I think Daniel felt like even he didn't expect it would be anywhere near this. But by the numbers, he's like, well, we reach, most Whiskey Vault videos do between $7,000 and $10,000 or 7,000 and 10,000 views upon release. Yeah. And it's daily content. He's like, and the entire Whiskey Tribe Facebook group is only 6,500 people. You look at those, and the new Whiskey Biscuits channel is only like 15,000 subscribers total. It's like, well, what can we expect? How can we possibly expect big numbers? And because when you watch their video, it is all about the community and what has happened. And I think, it is a case of an inch wide and a mile deep. The affection and what these guys have created.
Look at the count. The count. They have 739 patrons.
Yep.
Right. Modern Rogue is 654. That's not a tremendous gap.
Yes, correct. However, and Modern Rogue, by the numbers, Modern Rogue usually will oftentimes do 100,000 for an episode in the first 24 hours, and we're doing between 2 and 5 million views per month, orders of magnitude bigger than them. But Modern Rogue has never made a big deal about the Modern Rogue community. It has always been the content standing alone by itself, and
not to mention. With both of you guys is that there are a lot of pots on the stove right now.
Correct.
And so that means that what little community is doled out is kind of doled out in rations.
Right. Well, and that's why
they can focus on the one Facebook group and all of those people.
Exactly. And as we cast a wide net, I don't know what it looks like. And this is why I'm saying it's too premature to say what lessons I've taken from watching this. But it's certainly remarkable that with numbers so much smaller, and if you're listening, Rex and Daniel, I don't mean that in a bad way, with that the depth of they've tapped into something that I really wonder what lessons I can take away from, and that all of us, anybody creating something.
And I would say that, you bring up a good point, which is that, they do make a lot of video content but I would gather from just the copy points that I've seen on their page that their community is their primary thing,
Right.
And so it's hard to compare those two 1-to-1. I would say for your own benefit.
Agreed, and that's the beautiful thing about Patreon is that there's so many different ways to win at it. As a matter of fact, when Patreon got the whole world up in arms, it's because they were solving a problem that a segment because there was that whole chunk of Patreon that was using it as, get my newest release, and people were signing up, getting the free stuff, and then canceling.
Sure.
And they were attempting to solve that. That's a way that we would never even consider with what we do to use Patreon, and yet, and that's a whole.
And they were not aware of this whole other class because we were the dogs that didn't bark, right?
Right.
And so they're like, oh, well, we have one problem. Man, it's the number one problem we get. It's the number one problem we're going to solve. Look at us. We solved it. And then it was like, whoa, you just ruined my entire business model that I built on your platform. And they're like, oi, will we? Oh, man. All right.
Well, and this brings up another interesting question because my friend Gene Naftulev is a big fan of the No Agenda podcast, and they don't do Patreon. They don't even report any of their numbers. They
have a PayPal button.
Correct. And they have rewards that they will shout out your name and give you titles and all that stuff. And part of the reason Gene is not a fan of Patreon because Patreon, you can feel like you own your crowd, but you own them subject to the whims and at the pleasure of the platform upon which you have based all this. And
we did talk about this recently because I remember you were having a similar conflict with YouTube. Of
Yes.
like, oh, well, at the end of the day, I'm still beholden to YouTube.
right,
And the
I work
algorithm.
for Google. I work for Google, and my boss is an insane robot middle manager that refuses to tell me what it wants, but either will massively reward or punish me at its whim. And it's my job to guess what my crazy robot manager at Google wants me to do.
Sure. But on the other side of that coin, the solution to that is do a double toasted and roll your own technological solutions.
Correct.
Sorry, you were talking about Gene.
Oh yeah, no. I mean that would be Jane's point, and he would say, yeah, my guess, nobody can take Double Toasted's thing away from them. Nobody can take No Agenda's thing away from them because they don't rely on anyone else. So that is the legit double-edged sword because we have seen a shadow of what it might look like if Patreon decides, nah, screw it, man, we're taking a third now, and what are you gonna do? Leave us? We're Patreon.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, and then I've heard through the grapevine that they are very, 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 very cognizant of not upping their percentage. They feel that their percentage is their compact with people, with the folks that are on there. But also, it's like, man, they take what 5% or 3 to 5% or something like that.
5 to 10, depending on the processing fee of the pledge.
Yeah, I'm like, I'd be fine guaranteeing you guys an extra 0.5% to a percentage if you made the platform more robust and let me do more in different things and didn't want to randomly upset the entire apple cart. But that's a whole nother story.
Yeah. Though I will say, in the wake of Patreon, and this was growing before the Patreon issues last December, but also since then, I've seen, of all of the other Patreon competitors, I guess you could say, things like Kickstarter's Drip, which we have heard nothing about. I mean, you hear about drips all the time.
The news has been a drip, a very slow drip.
The one thing I have seen more and more is Ko-fi, K-O-F-I.
Oh, tell me a bit about it.
I mean, I think it's basically, I think it's basically like a PayPal button. Where it says, "Hey, buy me a coffee."
Oh,
And-
that's a good way that's a great built-in reframe. It seems to me like this is whereas Patreon is an open-ended, if you want money for a thing and have a vision to tell, then whatever it is, no matter how big or so small. But whereas coffee just sounds like, hey man, did you enjoy the last 2 hours of us chatting? Then would you buy me a coffee for it? Because I'd like to have it.
Yeah, and so the idea like, oh, you can set like, hey, I need to buy something, so this is my goal right now. Like I've seen a lot, especially of a lot of artists on Twitter and on Tumblr and stuff, say, hey, I have a coffee. If you like any of this stuff, can you just give me what you got? whatever you can give rather, over something like Patreon or someone's PayPal button for a one-time donation. So I think it's interesting.
Oh, that's interesting. It says here on the FAQ, it says, how does coffee make money? It says, we are a totally free service and we don't make money from advertising. We pay the cost of the service by accepting donations in exactly the same way as our members.
They have their own coffee page.
That's
funny.
That's amazing. That's crazy.
Yeah. I think there will probably be another outsider service like this to pop up in a recurring way, because I don't think coffee is recurring the way Patreon is.
Got it.
But I would not be surprised if you see another out of left field service that does recurring payments and says, hey, these are the features that Patreon has, and we're going to try to get as many of them as we want, or as we can replicate,
I totally agree, Bryce. And I think that's the ultimate success of the Patreon brand is if other brands are like, yes, no, we'll do that, but we'll do it better. And we'll call it Pepsi.
because Patreon has been so dominant as a subscription service that just you don't even need to describe it anymore, right? Like I see you're like, hey, check out I got a Patreon
much
now.
like, do you remember a time when the very idea of a PayPal button just screamed of amateur compared to? I remember when I opened my very first online store years ago, I insisted on getting a Yahoo Merchant Service account because I wanted to be quote unquote legit and take credit cards, which it turns out means I want to invite thousands of fraudulent orders from people testing out stolen credit cards at all times.
Yeah.
Huge pain in the butt, but it was like PayPal was not a real store at the time. And nowadays it's like PayPal, I think 40% of all the payments we take on scamstuff.com is by PayPal now.
Yeah.
Like that stigma is totally gone.
Yeah. And so I think it's a good sign for, in general, creators getting paid. The idea of something like coffee coming up and the idea that should something happen with Patreon, that there will probably be another service waiting in the wings.
Oh, that's interesting. Open Bayou points out that Facebook is slowly creeping into Patreon and Twitch subscriptions with badges and leaderboards.
Because, Facebook also has live streaming. And YouTube's doing a very similar thing with Super Chat. And I don't remember what their is it called Cheers? They have their own donation element. I don't remember what it's called.
I think what you hit on with coffee is that your approach, the making money off your audience on the internet is not unlike any other kind of salesmanship. Like you can just, read the manual of hello, I would like for you to buy a car. What car are you looking for? We can sort them by value or color. And it's like, fuck, screw you. I don't. You're weird. I don't like you. I don't want to give you money. And then you can have somebody slick who's like, hey, Buster Brown, I'll tell you what, your hair reminds me of my wife. Ha ha, just kidding. I'm divorced. Anyway, would you like to buy a car? And you're like, oh, you're charming. I'll buy a car from you. Coffee is unassuming. It's like, I'm an artist. I got a thing. I don't know, man. I'm weird about asking for money, but I got this thing, I guess. Oh, cool. Unassuming thing where I can give money to. Beep. Or even with no agenda. They got a PayPal button, and it's like, hey, look, we're trying to really break down what's going on, and we're not afraid to say everything. So we got to stay off the grid, and that's why you got to use this kind of weird thing, like a PayPal button to give us money. And then there's that, and what Patreon does is kind of crosses that middle thing of hey, here are some tools for subscription stuff, and we're going to continue to build it. Yeah. And that'll be that. But it's the reason why I think Twitch does well with it and Facebook doesn't do well, or who knows whether Facebook will do well, but YouTube hasn't had at least an explosion in that kind of community stuff, is because the approach matters. The aesthetics matter.
The story, right? Just as you have a story to tell through Patreon, Patreon has a story to tell of what they represent and how they want to do it.
I just saw someone posted an email today that they got from YouTube Gaming, which is the gaming focused off-site of YouTube. And by the way, if you've ever visited YouTube Gaming, I recommend you check it out. It is a hellhole.
You realize like that's the ongoing joke in our Slack is that if the word, read a douchebag comment and then immediately look at the username, bet you dollars has the word gaming in there.
Well, I mean,
really?
I mean, as delivering content.
Sure.
in an organization. But someone got an email today that they posted on Twitter that said, "Hey, in about a month, your YouTube gaming stuff, the people you follow on YouTube gaming and stuff, will now merge with your YouTube stuff. The apps will still work, but now they're merging." And it's like, what the hell is going on with YouTube? I don't get it. YouTube just keeps throwing very big, awkward messes at the wall.
Well, I mean, that is, if you go back and look at the reporting on Twitch's acquisition, it was a done deal that they were going to Google. Like, it was, there are friends of ours who like would say, but based on like firsthand knowledge of people that they knew inside, that this was like done. It was over. It was just a matter of all the due diligence, and it's a lot of money, so corporate structures, yada yada yada.
Wow.
Then 11th hour they go to Amazon, and so what I assume is that Twitch, and I have no inside knowledge on this aside from just stuff that's been reported, is that Twitch wanted a few things and Amazon offered them freedom in ways that, Twitch to Google meant that, well, eventually you'll be YouTube. You'll be Twitch YouTube, and then eventually it'll just be the YouTube thing, because ultimately that's really what we care about, and we're not creating competing services. We're creating its own thing that'll eventually seamlessly blend. And Amazon was like, no, look, we got server space and all the money in the world, so we want to.
I don't know if you heard about this, but we're pretty good at serving up stuff pretty fast. A few people come to us for that kind of thing.
Exactly. So that's what I think YouTube gaming is. YouTube gaming was like, oh crap, well, we'll do it ourselves. How hard could it be?
Whoops.
And there we go.
You guys have any After Things picks?
Yeah, as I mentioned, my pick is going to be to recommend my good friends, Rex and Daniel. Congratulations on the launch of the Whiskey Tribe. If you're not into it, you know what? I'll say their content is my pick.
Okay.
If you go to the Whiskey
Vault
or Whiskey Biscuits, both of them on YouTube, you're going to learn a lot about whiskey. And they're super fun and funny.
Cool. Justin, you got a pick?
Yeah, no, I don't. I really don't. I picked the Whiskey Biscuit guys too. I feel like they're my best friends, and I've never met them.
I have a pick, and I've really been getting like I think I've talked about that. I've been doing this for a few weeks, and I'm really getting into a habit of using it more, which is Duolingo, which is a mobile app that'll teach you a language. Their tagline: "Learn a language for free forever," and it's not super comprehensive. So I'm using it to learn a little bit of Japanese, and it's cool. I'm learning vocabulary, and you very much learn through repetition and actual use. So you have to kind of suss out a lot of the grammatical stuff on your own, at least in this lesson, because this is a newer language pack than Spanish and French and stuff. But it just as a thing for 15 20 minutes a day, I hit the buttons on my phone and I get the words right, and it's like, hey, you kept your streak up. And you know what it did, what it got me to do this past week is you can set a daily goal for yourself. So mine is set to 3 things a day. So I just have to do 3 lessons or practices or whatever, and I reach my goal. And if you don't meet your goal, you lose your streak.
Oh man! And then it's like you don't want to lose that streak.
And so you know what they do. So they do have like Duolingo Plus, which is like $8 or $10 a month, and you get offline access and stuff. Or you can just give them $5.
And you're like, no, keep my streak alive.
They'll just look the other way.
Well, and also
I
isn't part of how Duolingo monetizes everything is that some number of the lessons you're actually doing a translation service for other clients in some other arm of the thing?
That's a good question because I did not look into it after we.
Yeah. I may be mixing some stuff up, but I believe that what looks like a lesson at advanced levels, it turns out like you have 100 people translating one word for another, and then 80 of them all translate it the same way. Then it's like then that's your translation service. It's like
so I found a news press release. Duolingo is partnering with BuzzFeed and CNN to have their content translated by our community of language learners.
Yeah, there you go. So in other words, you get thousands of amateur, similar to how reCAPTCHA provides image recognition services.
Yeah. And I don't know necessarily how this works. If it means that, like the stuff that I'm learning, it tells me when I'm wrong. So maybe it's for like people who are at a high level can tap into that, because I think that like I'm
no I think the idea is that they're breaking it down in such elemental pieces that even if you get it wrong, it knows all the things that are right and wrong, and like it can translate it
right,
like just based on sheer repetition.
Because
by the way, those reCAPTCHAs. Is it a road if I know that there's a road below it, but it's not showing the road? Is it a car if it's a truck? Like, get off my nuts! I hate it.
I'm with you, man.
Oh, and this says, at least in this press release, they've been doing Spanish, Portuguese, and French. So those are courses.
Yeah, I think this is a 4-year-old press release.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, then who knows where it's at now?
Yeah,
4
years ago.
In any case, that's also an interesting thing. And if you don't want to pay, you just have to skip past you hit X on the Harry's ad that comes up after every lesson, and it's even that is not obtrusive. It's like, hey, this keeps your education free, and so I'm like, all right, whatever.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that's Duolingo. It's a mobile app. So
cool.
That'll do it for After Things. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Andrew, who's on assignment.
Thank you, Andrew, on assignment. It's been After. Coolio.
Right on. Cool. All right. Well, I gotta get a jump on this counterpart bees.
Ditto. Thank you everybody for checking out Weird Things. We will be back with Cord Killers soon.
Yeah.
What do you got today, Justin? You guys doing wrestling?
No wrestling today. Because ironically, Willie's gonna go watch wrestling tonight. So we got to bump it. But yeah, I'll be back tomorrow.
Very nice.
Cool.
Well, until the next time we see you, have a good life. Here's the thing. There's the thing. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Can I rewind it? We woke up naked, like we're more than friends. We can go through it, can do it all again, like we rewind it. Like we rewind it.